We enter into week 3 of telling our story. We're in 2 Kings today. 2 Kings chapter 5. And this is going to be totally different because I wasn't sure how we were going with this story. This is a story that I only remember in flannel graph. Like my wife said, that's showing my age. We showed our age before the service when we did the quote from Minnie Pearl, so might as well keep it up going. I was already told this week that I was elderly, so might as well go with that. Well, yeah, and I mentioned Paul Harvey. Had a guy this morning, he asked me, are you even old enough to know about Paul Harvey? I said, yeah, I listen to him every day at noon during rush. I was like, oh, okay. But when we look at the story of Naaman, we always look at the story, and the song that played at the beginning of the service talked about how he went to the river, and you think about it, we're familiar with the story, but there's some things that we miss in the story. One, we don't hear it enough. And two, we focus on the fact that he was a leper and he got into the water and he came out clean. But there's more to the story than just that. So let's look at the first part of this. Look at the first 5 verses. It says, Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master and in high favor, because by him the Lord had given victory to Syria. He was a mighty man of valor, but he was a leper. Now the Syrians, on one of their raids, had carried off a little girl from the land of Israel, and she worked in the service of Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, would that my Lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria. He would cure him of his leprosy. So Naaman went in and told his Lord. Thus and so spoke the girl from the land of Israel. And the king of Syria said, go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel. So he went, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothes. So that was about 75 pounds of talents and about 11 grams of shekels. And so he takes this with him. Somehow, Naaman contracted leprosy. He was playing with the 9-banded armadillo and got it somehow. But leprosy in the Bible, the word leprosy just simply means some skin disease. So it could have been a rash, it could have been boils, it could have been a whole host of things. It could have been shingles. It doesn't narrow it down to one specific disease. And it could be or it may not be the same leprosy that we think of. When we think of leprosy, we think of the holes in the skin, the rotting flesh. But it was something that, according to the Levitical law, that you must separate yourself from others. Even non-Israelites still believed in that you've got to get away. There was no cure that they knew of. There wasn't anything they could do to fix the situation. You have it, and you're going to die with it. Right? Thus, there's not much cure if you get psoriasis. There's lotions, there's stuff that you can do that tame it down, but if you got it, you're going to always have dry skin. There's just nothing, unless you have a skin transplant, that's going to change that. But that's not something that's contagious. But they weren't sure, and so the Levitical law says that you have to not only separate yourself from everybody else, but you have to burn all of your clothing. Anything that you sit on has to be burned. Anything you touch, dish-wise, has to be burned. If you touch anything on the house, you touch the door has to be taken out. If you touch the wall, you have to pull the sheetrock off the wall. I mean, they were that careful because they didn't know what it was and if it could spread. And if anybody saw you, you had to yell out, "Unclean, unclean," and get away from it. And here, Naaman was one of the best leaders that the king had had. And unfortunately, he came down with this horrible disease. I'm sure he's tried everything that they could come up with and hasn't worked. But on one of the trips before he contracted this disease, they captured a town and took a little girl with them. And this little girl knew about God and knew what he had done in the past. And evidently knew something about a prophet named Elisha. Last week we looked at Elijah, close to the end of Elijah's life here on earth. God gave him an apprentice who worked with him, whose name was Elisha, which gets it really fun when you're trying to tell a story of something where both of them are together, because Elijah and Elisha sound so much alike and we get it confused all the time. And it's the reason we always tell you to go back and look in the Bible, so that way you can make sure that fact check us. But as Elisha has taken on this position, he's done miracles already. And somehow this girl had known, and she tells Naaman's wife, who is her boss, said, "Man, I sure wish that your husband would just go find the prophet of God in Samaria. Because if he would, all his problems would be solved. He'd be happy. You'd be happy because y'all could be back together again. Because you know how it is. Even if it's just a weekend trip or an overnight trip, when you're not with your spouse, you don't feel the same. There's a disconnect because you're not together. So imagine how they felt. Never, ever would they be able to be together again. Never, ever, unless she wants to be an outcast as well, would they ever be able to hold hands or to hug or to kiss or anything together. It's worse than the restrictions we had during COVID. It wasn't just wear a mask and stay 6 feet apart. It was wear a mask, wear clothing, and get as far away as possible. It was to the point that if they saw anybody traveling on the road, they had to yell out, "Unclean," so that you could leave that road and walk in the dirt to keep from touching something that they had touched themselves. It was this horrible. And so you know that they were miserable. You know Naaman had to be miserable. And if you've had any type of rash, or, you get right now, as hot as it is, you get a sunburn and you start peeling, what is the first thing that it does when it starts peeling? It itches like crazy. I haven't had shingles, but I know Mom has had it. You brought up shingles. Everybody says that it is an incessant itch. When Gigi gets her allergy, she itches like crazy. You've had the chicken pox. You itch incessantly, and you get the little pink calamine lotion so that you can play connect the dots with yourself. We itch incessantly. So imagine something like that just causes a constant pain and torture and torment. He would look for anything. And so he goes to his master, the king, and says, "Okay, this girl that we captured that works for my wife, she said this, and she said that, and she said such and such and so, and can I go?" And the king says, I'll let you go, but I'll even go a step farther. I'll write a letter to the king of Israel to let you in to see this prophet. So far, so good, right? Everything is going great for Naaman. He's finally going to get some relief. Now remember, Naaman is not an Israelite. He's not a Jew. And so he comes and he takes all this money and all this wealth with him. And that's Naaman's first mistake. Naaman thinks with a letter of recommendation and with money he can buy God's touch. You and I too many times think that if we do the right things, say the right things, and do just enough good, God will pour His favor out upon us. God's not a genie, and God is not a jack-in-the-box. That if we rub it just right or turn just enough turns on the handle, that poof, everything works out to our favor. No, He's not a vending machine. If He's a vending machine, He's the kind that, you put the dollar in and it shoots it right back out. We get rejected all the time because that's not how God works. We don't come to Him with everything that we have and say, okay, I'm giving this to you so that you will bless me. We are to come to Him and give Him everything that we have, but it's not so that He blesses us. It's because He has blessed us, we give back to Him. Because He has saved us, we give to Him, not so that. In a relationship with each other, if all I did was just give to Cherie, I give her money, I give her affection, I give her food, I do things that I know that she wants me to do just so that she loves me, is that really love? Because what happens if I'm sick one day and I don't do any of those things? Does she stop loving me because I didn't do that? Well, no, it's not 100%. But if that's what your relationship is built upon, then something's going to happen. Because you're not always going to be able to do everything to please them. But that's not how God works. We don't come to Him on our terms and say, okay, I've got this money here. If I give it to you, you'll do what I say, right? That's not how God works. God says, you come to me on my terms, and I'll show you what happens. And so that was the first mistake that we see, is that Naaman came thinking he could buy a touch from God. We'll pick up in verse 8. Verse 6, sorry. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, which read, when this letter reaches you, know that I have sent to you Naaman, my servant, that you may cure him of his leprosy. And when the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, am I God to kill and to make alive, that this man sends word to me to cure a man of his leprosy? Only consider and see how he is seeking a quarrel with me. But when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent to the king, saying, why have you torn your clothes? Let him come now to me, that he may know that there is a prophet in Israel. So Naaman came with his horses and chariots and stood at the door of Elisha's house. And we'll stop there. Pick up with that in a second. But Naaman comes, turns over the letter, and the king gets upset. Do you really think that I'm able to do this? Or anybody could do this? I'm not God. You're really here as a spy. Sometimes when we are genuinely seeking the right things, it gets construed as the wrong thing. Right here, Naaman was coming, truly seeking the right thing. I am seeking help. But where he was trying to help, it was perceived to be trickery. That it was deceitful. That he was coming to spy everything out. Or as it says, to start a quarrel, to pick a fight with him. And that wasn't his intent. And Naaman could have been like, I knew I shouldn't have came to you worthless Jews. You're upset because we came in and raided part of your country. You don't want to have anything to do with this. I'm turning around, I'm going home. This was stupid. This was a waste of my time. Sometimes we get in situations where that's exactly how it feels. We need help. We need a touch. And everything and everyone around us make us feel like we're there for the wrong reasons. Why'd you come today? Why did you come to church? Why are you watching online? Are you here to pick a fight? Well, the carpet's the wrong color. We didn't sing the right songs today. Pastor's not wearing a tie. It's summertime. I want to be comfortable. I'll have a tie on later. It's too hot. It's too cold. The benches are too hard. If we changed them out and got really nice soft chairs, then they'd be too soft. We replace everything with recliners, and everybody would complain that they didn't have anything to drink. If we got them something to drink, well, we got the wrong drink. You can never please everybody. But does that mean that we stop coming? This morning, we've been up early and passing by several churches. You see them full. The parking lot is full, and you come here and our parking lot's not full. So does that mean we just quit? Throw up our hands? Well, our parking lot's not going to be full, so why do we even try? You go to your job, and it's not working as the way that you thought it was supposed to, or you're not getting as much as you think you deserve, or you're not getting appreciated the way that you think. Should you just throw up your hands and walk away and say, forget this, I'm not doing this anymore? Life isn't all about us. It's not all about what can make my life easier. Our life is what can be done to point others to Christ. Maybe it's not the best job in the world. I can guarantee you, flipping burgers at Burger King or McDonald's is not the best job in the world. But guess what? It may be the best job that you can get at that exact moment, and it pays the bills, just like you said, Tim. You're grateful that you have the means to buy groceries. It's nice when you get to open up a refrigerator and you don't have crickets in there chirping at you saying, can you feed me before you feed me yourself? You open up the pantry and, like we talked about last week, all you got is a jar of peanut butter and the jelly's even turned moldy. It doesn't matter what you do, your life should be pointing others to Christ. The king gets all upset, but what does Elisha say? King, calm down. It'll be okay. Send him to me. And he didn't say, send him to me so that I can cure him. He didn't even say, send him to me so that through me God can cure him. He said, send him to me so that he may know that there is a God in Israel. When people look at us and they see the circumstances that go on in our life, can they look at us and say, there is a God who is touching that individual? When we go through our circumstances, when we go through our pains and our sufferings, can they look at us and see that we're different than what the world is and say, there is something about you that is different? What is it? May they see that we have a God in our midst. Not us, but the God. And then this is where the story gets really weird. And this is where you get the title from. You want me to do what? Because look at what happens. Verse 10. And Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored, and you shall be clean. Huh? You want me to go take a bath? Verse 11. But Naaman was angry and went away, saying, Behold, I thought that he would surely come out to me and stand and call upon the name of the Lord his God, and wave his hand over the place and cure the leper. Are not Bana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. You want me to do what? Wasn't it not bad enough that your king berates me and accuses me of trying to start a fight with him, and now you won't even have the decency to come out and see me? Do you know who I am? I am Naaman. Elisha's just sitting in the house. He sends out the servant. The servant gives the message. He goes back home. No big deal to him. But Naaman has to do something. See, he came all the way to Samaria on the faith of a little girl that he probably doesn't even know. Remember, the girl was his wife's servant. Naaman's outside of the city, so he probably didn't even know who she was. But on the faith of a little girl, he came. But see, the faith of the girl could not cure Naaman. Your parents, your friends, whoever told you about Christ cannot save you. Their faith may get you to a place where you can hear the gospel, but their faith cannot save you. You have to make the choice. Do you want to accept it? Do you want him? Naaman had to do something. He had to follow through. How hard is it? Going to the water. As hot of a day it is today, when we were eating Whataburger, there's this little bitty kid, and he just kept on saying it over and getting louder and louder every time he said it. I want to go swimming. Dad, I want to go swimming. Dad, I want to go swimming. He wanted to go swimming, but he couldn't go swimming unless Dad took him to swim. But then Dad could take him to swim, and here's the water. I want to go swimming. Well, go ahead. I want to go swimming. Well, jump in. I want to go swimming. You got to get in the water. I'm swimming. No, you're not. You're still standing on the side. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. He ain't drinking, he's drowning. See, that's the problem. Verse 13. But his servants came near and said to him, My father, it is a great word the prophet has spoken to you. Will you not do it? Has he actually said to you, Wash and be clean? So he went down and dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of God. I want to stop there before we get the rest of that verse. He dipped 7 times, just like he was told. What does the rest of that verse say? I love that. He dipped in the water according to the word of the man of God, and his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. It wasn't the 5th time he dipped in the water. He was still a leper. He dipped in 6 times. He was still a leper. He dipped the 7th time. He was still a leper. That's what the scripture says. He dipped 7 times and was still a leper. It says, but when he came out of the water, he was clean. 7 times. How many times do we ask for God to touch us? For God to heal us? For God to do something? And after the 3rd time we stop. We're done. End of the story. What about the other 4 times? You know that saying, doesn't matter how many times you fall down, as long as you get up one more time than you fell, you win. He was knocked down 7 times. 7, the number of perfection, the number of completion. And then I love what it says, that his skin was like what? That of a little child. And who was it who gave him the faith enough to come all the way to Samaria? A little child. See, the faith of a little child got him there, but it was his faith to obey that got him healed, that got him cured. Naaman is just like us. Too many times we don't want to do what God has said because it seems outlandish. I mean, really? I have a skin disease and you want me to get into a muddy river? You remember what we said the Jordan River represented last week? It was the freedom that came after a period of waiting and after anguish and suffering. Naaman knew all about anguish and suffering. He went into the Jordan River and found freedom. He found restoration. But that's not the end of the story. Look at verse 15. Then he returned to the man of God, he and all his company, and he came and stood before him. And he said, behold, I knew that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. So accept now a present from your servant. But he said, as the Lord lives, before whom I stand, I will receive none. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. Then Naaman said, if not, please let there be given to your servant 2 mule loads of earth. For from now on, your servant will not offer burnt offering or sacrifice to any god but the Lord. In this matter, may the Lord pardon your servant when my master goes into the house of Rimmon to worship there. Leaning on my arm, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon. When I bow myself in the house of Rimmon, the Lord pardon your servant in this matter. And he said to him, go in peace. Naaman had a complete change of heart. When I go back, I know there is no other God but the God that is in Israel. But I've got to I've got to bow down when I go into the temple. But I'm not worshiping that God. Please ask God to forgive me for what I have to do. But I know that He's the only God. At first, he brought all this stuff to buy his cure. Now he wants to give it as a praise offering for what God has done. You see the difference? We can give all that we want to God out of gratitude for what He's done, but we don't give it to Him to buy it. To buy His favor, to buy His blessings, to buy His healing. We give not because we want it, but because He's already given it to us and we don't deserve it. Why in the world would a pagan worshiping ruler have the favor of a holy God? Someone who worships multiple gods, why would God do that for somebody like that? Because He did it for you and for me. You and I, we've worshipped so many gods, we can't keep track of them. Money, houses, women, cars, shoes, purses, keeping up with the Joneses, having a good impression, having a good name, look good in the community. But why is it that when all these celebrities want some peace and quiet, they go into hiding so nobody recognizes them? We don't have to hide to not be recognized. We just walk out and nobody recognizes us. See, the fortune and fame doesn't buy them happiness. You know what does buy happiness? Knowing that Jesus loves me. This I know. And that He calls me His child. And that would be a good story if we stopped right there. And a lot of times that's where we stop the story. But unfortunately, there's more to the story. Naaman goes away. And we'll see next week. That's where we're going. Is that Elisha's servant, Gehazi, said, well, he brought all this money. Why should it go to waste? So he runs after Naaman. Pick up the end of verse 19. But when Naaman had gone from him a short distance, Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said, see, my master has spared this Naaman, the Syrian, in not accepting from his hand what he brought. As the Lord lives, I will run after him and get something from him. So Gehazi followed Naaman. And when Naaman saw someone running after him, he got down from the chariot to meet him and said, is all well? And he said, all is well, my master. All is well. My master has sent me to say, there have just now come to me from the hill country of Ephraim 2 young men of the sons of the prophets. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of clothing. And Naaman said, be pleased to accept 2 talents. And he urged him and tied up 2 talents of silver and 2 bags with 2 changes of clothing and laid them on 2 of his servants. And they carried them before Gehazi. And when he came to the hill, he took them from their hand and put them in that house. And he sent the men away, and they departed. He went in and stood before his master, thinking he got away with this. And Elisha said to him, where have you been, Gehazi? Doesn't that sound familiar? And he said, your servant went nowhere. But he said to him, Did not my heart go when the man turned from his chariot to meet you? Was it a time to accept money and garments, olive orchards and vineyards, sheep and oxen, male servants and female servants? We'll stop there and we'll close with the last verse. Gehazi thought he got away with this. He hides it in his house and comes in. First thing out of Elisha's mouth. Where have you been, Gehazi? Where'd you go? Remember way back, the very beginning, chapter 3 of Genesis, after Adam and Eve had eaten the fruit, God had walked in the garden every day since creation. They heard the footsteps of God and they hid because they were naked and were afraid. And God said, Adam, Adam, where are you? Finally, he said, I was ashamed and I hid myself because I was naked. At least he had enough scruples to admit that he had sinned. Gehazi, he didn't admit nothing. I've been nowhere. I was watching the news. I didn't go nowhere. Every time that Elisha is mentioned in the Bible, once Elijah leaves, it's always Elisha, the man of God. And that'll come into play next week, especially. But it's always the man of God. And it said his heart, his spirit went with him and was there and watched the whole thing. I wonder if that's how you moms know before we ever have an idea. And we get in trouble because y'all already knew. But said, is this the time? We should be celebrating at what God did. And you wanted stuff for yourself. How greedy. How selfish. May we not make the same mistake that Gehazi did. When God sees, when God works in our presence, may we not get caught up on who they are or what they have. May we just rejoice that God did something and revealed himself. Not ask, well, what can I get out of this? Now notice what happens at the end. Verse 27. Therefore, Elisha still speaking. Therefore the leprosy of Naaman shall cling to you and to your descendants forever. So he went out from his presence, a leper like snow. Upon him, his children, his children's children, their children, and up to now, the descendants of Gehazi are still dealing with leprosy. May we never be greedy and try to cash in on what God does. May we be more like Naaman, who, even though it made absolutely no sense, he listened to the advice of a little girl. And he listened to the advice of his servants. And got into dirty water. And when he came up after the first time, he didn't quit. After he came up the fifth time and still didn't see any difference, he didn't quit. May we do what he asks us to do, so that when we come up after the seventh time, we're fully restored. There's a lot that Naaman could tell us. And I wish there was more to the story, because I would love to know what happened with Naaman. But what I do know is if God could do that with Naaman, He can do that for you and me. And if He can do that for you and me, He can do that for others as well. Naaman told his story. The woman in Zarephath told her story. And that's why I tell my story. Will you tell your story? God, thank you that you love us and that you give us these stories to encourage us, to strengthen us, to guide us, that we would share our story of how you restored us. When it doesn't make sense and when it sounds like nothing, may we still go down 7 and come up 8. Because it was when He came up that He was healed. May it be the same with us, that when we follow you and do as you say, when we come up, we too are made as pure as a little child. Be with us as we go through this week. May we seek you and seek ways to share our story with others. In your name we pray. Amen. Next week, we'll be looking at There's More With Us Than You Know. So that'll be a fun one. And looking forward to that. We will see you